Hello, my name is Bilal, and my chapter, which I have chosen, is fiscal policy in the course of Introduction to Principles of Economics. And we can start. Sorry. In this presentation, now we'll go through the first slide represent as the introduction, and in this presentation, we'll go through the introduction and uh, and the first bullet is of importance, the fiscal policy and the government regulations and how will impact in the stimulation of economy, the purpose of fiscal policy, demand supply relationship in the various situations, for example, in expansionary fiscal policy and building stability, the relationship between the government expenditure and tax revenues, and issues of fiscal policy. Okay, so the first of all, the nature of fiscal policy, it consists of government spending and the tax collection. So it's designed to achieve the economy purposes such as full employment, price stability, or, for example, economic growth. Okay, if we move on, we can see here two types of fiscal policy is divided by the discretionary and non-discretionary. So discretionary fiscal policy, when the changes made in government spending and the taxes by the federal government, and it doesn't occur automatically. So the parliament must pass a discretionary spending or tax bill before it becomes a law. So in the opposite, we have another type of the fiscal policy. It's not discretionary. It also refers to the changes in spending and the taxes that occur, of course, automatically or passively and without any decision making of the parliament. And the parliament must pass. Sorry, and as a result, it occurs of the spending and the tax bill that was put into the law by the earlier parliament. So, okay, expenditure policy, it's occurs during the recession, and it consists of tax reductions, increasing government spending, or both. Okay, if we look at this graph of the expenditure policy, fiscal policy, here we can see that if we made the government increase in government expenditure, if the government will invest in the highways, hospital or healthcare, or other municipal buildings, we will have 5 billion initial increase in the GDP, and our aggregate demand will raise by a certain amount. And another type of the developing situation is reduction of the tax. Okay, so if we reduce the tax, so our aggregate demand can be increased by the 20 billion, and our aggregate demand can increase and our real GDP can be increased by the 20 billion in overall. So, and actually government can apply two options to increase the equilibrium point between the aggregate supply and demand. So built-in stability is a relationship between the fixed government expenditure and the tax revenues that can be vary. So we can see if the tax revenue exceeds the government expenditure, so we will have surplus in the budget of the government. If in opposite, we will have that the government expenditure will exceed the tax revenue, we'll have deficit in the in the built-in stability graph. So what kind of role it plays in the economy? So if we have like taxes, so our taxes will reduce the aggregate demand and spending, and however reduction in government expenditure will like needed when the economy has inflationary pressure, and however also another type in opposite, we have increase in government expenditure when it's needed when the economy has struggles and has some amount of the difficulties. Okay, so here we can see that previously we discussed that the tax can be vary, and when the tax revenue change with GDP as well. So we can see here that our belt instability will be large, and the relationship between the distance between the T and G will be large. Yeah, and when in opposite, if the tax revenue doesn't change at all, we will have a low built instability distance. So it's divided by the three groups, and the first group is a progressive tax system when the average rises with the GDP, and proportional when the average tax rate remains constant with when the GDP changes or rises, and the average tax rate falls uh, during the regressive tax system, and when, of course, GDP always rises. So cyclically just budget happens in the system during the full employment economy, and it shows the budget balance during this situation. And it happens, if we could see, if the tax revenue decreases in year one to year two, we can see the reduction in the GDP by $550 billion, and in the government expenditure and tax revenue. Okay, the relationship. And another situation, they will cyclically adjust deficit in the year three to year four. We can see that it was reduced by the 25 billion in full employment deficit, and our year four relationship between T and G is at 425 and is reduced by 25 billion, uh, comparing with the previous graph. Okay, so uh, excuse me. Okay, what's the kind of problems in the integration of problems of fiscal policy? So it's divided by the three groups, and between timing, political considerations, and future policy reveals. So recognition, sometimes it's complicated to recognize the recession in difficult times, and it has to take several months to identify. And of course, it doesn't happen. So it happens, and it takes a lot of time to identify. Administrations, it's when the government make any regulations in the fiscal policy, so the effect can take a lot of time, and the consequences can have long period to be happen. In operational, it's what actual can happen after the uh, policy changes, fiscal policy changes. Sorry. And another type of issue is the political consideration. So politicians can have fiscal policy changes in their interest to be re-elected and to improve their rating. They can change the fiscal policy. And another type of issue is the future policy reveals. It's when the taxpayer thinks that the changes in the tax can have temporary difference, and can sometimes doesn't spend and have some savings account, and can because of the thought that the tax reduction can be can be can have temporary effect. Okay, so another thing to consider is the crowding out effect. It can lead to increase interest rate and reduce the investment spending. It happens when the federal government increase uh, the price of the borrowing. It will directly lead to the crowding out effect. So so it also reduce the investment money. Another type fiscal policy in the open market, it's a broad shocks. It's when the countries that have ideal uh, relationship with Canada can buy a lot of goods, and it can cause demand pull inflation. So the Canada can have a lot of struggles, and beyond the uh, recession and expansionary fiscal policy. Another net effect happens when the interest rate increases, and the dollar amount of the Canada can increase consequently. So the when the sorry, yeah, here you can see in the graph, and during so when the actually uh when the when the Canada buy more imports than exports, so the expansionary fiscal policy can be cancelled. Okay, so now public debt, it's an accumulation of total deficit and surpluses of Canadian dollars that can be from the past actions. So the total debt of the Canada is over $1 trillion. Demand it's held by the public and chartered banks at 58% and non-residents 28% and Bank of Canada 13%. So in conclusion, in summary, Canada's fiscal policy is a dynamic tool for economic management, balancing government spending and taxation. It aims to foster growth, stability, and acceleration to sustainability. Its strengths reflect adaptability to global events and commitment to responsible financial stewardship. And thank you for attention.